much, Anna, and lovely to see everybody online today. I will just introduce myself and give a few quick introductory remarks before I hand over to the Coventry University team. My name is Charlotte. I'm the Director of Programmes here at the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council. Once again, welcome to everybody, and particularly those joining from our strategic partners as well. We at CWEIC are delighted to be working in collaboration with Coventry University on this webinar and the bespoke MBA programme in Global Trade and Investment, which we'll learn more about later. We're really excited today to be joined by Professor Peter Morgan, who is an Associate Professor and Curriculum Lead in Leadership and Management at Coventry University, and we look forward to hearing his insights in just a moment. Professor Morgan will tell us about the impact of cultural differences on leadership. This session will explore what makes leadership successful, examine how leadership within cultures varies, and how these differences can influence the effectiveness of different leadership styles. I'll shortly also hand over to the MBA academic team to say a few words before Professor Morgan begins. But before I do so, I'd just like to take a few moments to talk a little bit about CWEIC and the Commonwealth for those who maybe haven't come across us before. So CWEIC is a membership organisation with a mandate from the Commonwealth Heads of Government to promote trade and investment across the 56 nations. Our job is to bring the economic opportunity of the Commonwealth to the world's doorstep and promote the Commonwealth as a place to do business. With shared legal systems, administrative systems, and a common language, it is on average around 21% cheaper to do business within the Commonwealth, and we call this the Commonwealth Advantage. Our work at CWEIC is underpinned by an extremely supportive partner base of around 140 strategic partners from all across the Commonwealth, from both governments and regional and national, chambers of commerce, investment promotion agencies, to multilateral organisations and global businesses. We also have a hub network of around 14 offices spread across the Commonwealth, providing in-country expertise and access to market to businesses looking to expand and operate. And what makes the Commonwealth a unique place to do business? Well, it has a combined population of 2.5 billion citizens. It is home to 40% of the global workforce and half of the top 20 emerging cities. Our work at CWEIC recognises the challenges that many citizens of the Commonwealth face, including the recent economic and geopolitical challenges and the ongoing threats of climate change. To address these challenges, the significance of education cannot be underestimated. Further education and professional qualifications play a vital role in supporting workers to reach their potential, and it provides employers with a highly skilled and versatile workforce. The key to solving global challenges is educating and nurturing ambitious leaders who can think critically and strategically to solve complex business issues. We at CWEIC are excited to see what Coventry University MBA programmes cohort will achieve in the future, and I know the team have all been excited to see the interest in the programme so far. It's a fantastic opportunity to develop the skills and knowledge essential to a career in business, and we hope you'll consider the opportunities that this programme can bring to yourself and to your colleagues. I'll pause there. We hope you enjoy this masterclass. Please get involved by asking questions. I'll now hand over to Dr. Anais Gickhaus and Dr. Joan Lockyer to say a few words and also to introduce Professor Morgan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to turn up for this masterclass session. We want first of all to welcome our guest speaker, Associate Professor Peter Morgan, and our colleagues and strategic partners from the Commonwealth, and also our participants who came in to listen to this masterclass session. We want to welcome you to the third Coventry University MBA Masterclass webinar session in partnership with CWEIC. I will quickly now introduce Dr. Peter Morgan. Peter is an associate professor and curriculum lead in leadership and management. Peter has been in leadership positions for a couple of decades now, actually. This includes associate dean position at an international higher education institution, and has engaged in leadership position in numerous countries, including the Commonwealth. Therefore, Peter is a true global scholar. Peter, welcome and thank you so much.
Anas, thank you for that warm welcome. Yeah. Okay. Shall I start? Get on with talking about cross-cultural leadership. I've got some slides, just bear with me. I'm just going to share those so that you can follow along with me. So hopefully this will work and the technology will be on our side. So a few questions. To start off with, how can we teach and enable folk in business and in education and in government and in all sorts of different sectors of the economy to actually be effective leaders when leadership may be, and I use the word may because I'll come back to that a little bit later on, may be different in terms of the requirements in different countries? That's really the crux of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to spend about 15 minutes going through and talking about leadership, talking about culture, and bringing to your attention some of the really interesting research that's been done over recent years and continues to be done in relation to the nature of leadership cross-culturally. And I'm going to talk about some research that's been done in more than 140 different countries, more than 17,000 different managers from those countries, and research that you can actually be involved with as well, that's ongoing right at now. And there's a number of surveys that we're going to look at and a number of statistics, some of which are quite interesting, some of which are quite confusing, and some of which actually we can start to think about how we apply that in the organizations, in our own careers, and in our own roles. Anas introduced me. Let me just give you a little more detail. So I've spent 9 years working overseas for a UK university at a campus there at a management level, and had some responsibility for some things at university level as well. I've taught in Malaysia, Singapore, in Poland, and all of that. But none of that is important unless I can introduce to you something that's going to be useful. And so that's really where I want to go over the next 15 minutes or so, maybe just a little bit more than that. Now, my PowerPoint needs to be able to move on. So let's just make sure we've got the questions up. Isn't leadership just leadership? If you can lead in one place, you can lead in another. If you can lead in one organization, then presumably you can lead in another, correct? Or, you know, is it more subtle than that? But if leadership is just leadership, why do we need touchy-feely? Why do we need to understand how people operate or how they think or what their values and ideals and beliefs might be? I think it's a little bit more complicated than just saying leadership is leadership. It does vary, and we're going to look at that as we go through. Do we focus on the goals of leadership or the methods? If we focus on the goals, then maybe we do adopt what we might see as a more universal approach. Leadership is just leadership. But if we focus on the how we get to where we want to get to, then maybe things are going to be a little bit different. What about our focus? Because isn't every individual different in some way? I mean, I walk along the street or I go into the office, and at Coventry, we have a huge range of different cultures and nationalities. But are those two things synonymous? Does everybody from one country act and think in the same way that everybody else thinks from that same culture, or is it far more subtle than that? And I use the word subtle because that implies it needs a bit more digging. But subtlety means complexity, which is tiring, because if we're dealing with individuals that are different, how do we know how to lead? And how, this is just doing my head in, how do we kind of adapt and adopt the different methods that we need to use? So how can we lead cross-culturally? And Are there things that are common, but some things that are different? Is there this ideal that everybody can be a leader everywhere? And that's kind of some of the things that we want to look at. So whether we're in leadership position or not, I think there's a few things that we can say that make leaders leaders. They have authority, they have decision-making power, etc., etc. But the responsibilities put on leaders, morally, but also in terms of getting the job done, may also vary somewhat as well. So when we talk about leadership roles or leadership positions or leadership careers, we think about having impact, changing something. And sometimes we know leaders and senior leaders who get into a position and they want to make a mark on their career. They want to impress their boss. So they change things without really understanding how things are working or where the issues might be. Having a vision. Someone once said, without vision, the people die. What is our vision? Because sometimes we get promoted to leadership roles when we don't have that vision, when we haven't had time to take in the information and look at what's going on and how we can achieve that. And then influencing other people to buy into that vision becomes a really difficult thing to do as well sometimes for some people. Taking action. Was it, there's a British comedy called Yes, Prime Minister. And Sir Humphrey, the civil servant who was advising the Prime Minister, said, no, it's not about what we achieve. It's about the amount of activity that we do. And the more activity that we do, the more successful people will see us as being. Activity needs to lead somewhere, and having those goals becomes important. Influencing people is often mentioned in definitions of leadership, and having direction, pushing people, empowering people, and having decision-making ability. It's a very simple definition of leadership. Leader is someone who has followers. You don't have followers, you're not leading anybody. You may be on paper, but actually in impact, doesn't work. But why are we having followers? So that things can get done, so that we can actually move forward with things, and so other people's careers and skills and personalities and abilities can grow and can change, so that things that need to be done can be done well, to empower. And there's a model of leadership, it's called servant leadership, where you actually push people from behind and you enable them to get their own visions and achieve things that contribute to the global whole or to the corporate whole. Another definition of leadership, and this comes from a project that I'm going to talk about a little bit called the Globe Project, the ability to influence, motivate, enable others to contribute to success as their organization. Talk about Globe Project a little bit later on. So what is culture? Because actually it's difficult to arrive at one definition of culture, but let me just give you a few. The way that things are done around here is usually one of the definitions that people come up with, or the feel of an organization or the nation or the team or the group. It can be looked at in different levels. Let me give you a couple of academic definitions. It's a collective programming of the mind. Oh, blah, blah, blah. You know what? Academics love long definitions sometimes. Just keep it simple. But it's all about differentiating what makes people different. And what's interesting here is Hofstadter, who is very well known in terms of international culture, talks about group and categories, doesn't talk about nationalities. Yet that is so much, so often the focus of what culture is about. Attitudes, values, sets, beliefs, different for each individual, communicated from one generation to the next. If it's different from one individual, how do I lead in a way that directs and empowers and influences all of those other folks? So what level do I look at when I'm looking at culture, or is it national, is it group, is it organizational, or so on? And we get this kind of dimension, if you like. At one end we have the individual, and at the other end we have the kind of shared personality, the things that make people, or the things that people have in common. And that can be a difficult one to kind of resolve sometimes. Where do we draw the line? Shared values, beliefs, identities, interpretations, and meanings of significant events that result from common experiences of members of collectives. Again, not nationality necessarily, maybe group, maybe team, maybe people group within a nationality, and are transmitted across generations. The GLOBE project is about global leadership and behavioral effectiveness. That's what GLOBE stands for. And since the early 2000s, they've done a lot of research into culture and so on, particularly around leadership. That's why I'm going to talk about them in a moment. But just let's have a look at ourselves and the way that individuals, wherever they're from, behave and act, and how culture kind of comes into that. So we behave in a particular way, and sometimes, more often than not, that's based upon the values that we have. And the values can be different from group to group, but typically they stay with us, and they're pretty difficult to change, in the same way that attitudes are quite difficult to change. Behavior is easier to change, but the values and the attitudes far more challenging. Beliefs become really difficult to change, but again, they have an impact on the way that we behave, and they have an impact on the values that we have. And the way we see the worldview, if you like, is really an important part of then how we interact and lead other people, and even just relate to other people. So some of that is visible. Behavior is visible, but the other things are implicit. Sometimes we can struggle to actually identify our values, and sometimes other people can struggle to tell us what their values are, because we don't normally ask that kind of question. So how does all of that fit into leadership and cross-cultural leadership? Well, I just want to go through some very quick ideas around how leadership works and how we interact as leaders with other people. So here's some thoughts that maybe we have about leadership: that I'm good at some things, not good at others. We're rarely good at everything. And so how do we bring in other people to help us fill the gaps? And if we've got gaps, can we learn them? Are they trainable? My sister is a music teacher. She's great at music, teaches so many different instruments. I am absolutely appalling and rubbish at it, and I can't play a note on a recorder even if I wanted to. So some things are trainable. The ability to actually work out where we are, the sense of direction that we might have. Those things are difficult to train. But behaviorally, there may be some things that are easier. So can we learn those things that we struggle with? Vision, well, if we don't have any vision, then, you know, we need to think about where we are in leadership and what we're doing. But this one is really kind of an important one. Implementing that vision is going to require the ability to relate to other people. So if we have no people skills, then how do we get into a position of leadership in the first place? And what can we do to actually make sure that we get other people's buy-in to the things that we need? So there's some unhelpful attitudes that people have sometimes: rebellion and resistance and cynicism and skepticism, and those things that are so challenging to leaders. And then maybe my personal confidence needs to change as well. You need to have personal confidence so that people can trust you, but you need to have your values and your abilities. You need to be very clear about that and open in enabling other people to come and work with you. There's an arrogance sometimes if we take confidence too far. You know, a weakness is an overdone strength. So if we've got too much of something, then sometimes that can appear as a problem. If we listen too much, we're seen as quiet. If we're too confident, we can seem as arrogant. So we need to balance some of these things a little bit. And then resilience as well. Just some ideas as to actually how we portray ourselves and put ourselves across. My own kind of attitude to some of these things is that I'm open and I tend to be quite straightforward with people as much as I can, and if I need to give bad news to somebody, then I do that. That's something I need to do. Integrity is important. I'm not going to go through that, but if we don't have integrity, people are not going to follow us. Whatever our values, whatever our confidence, they're just not going to do it because they don't trust where we're at. They'll see us as changing things. So openness, honesty, consistency. Can you control your integrity? Yes, by behaving consistently. What you're going to struggle to do is to control other people's perception of you. And if that's the way that you lead, you're going to have a problem. I'm going to go through things as quickly as I can. I know I'm running out of some time here. So when it comes to leadership cross-culturally, let's add international culture in here. And I sent this picture to Anais recently, and Anais said, I know where that is. So anyway, I'll tell you where it is in just a second. Have a look at the picture. I've used this in corporate training quite a lot over the years. The three people in the picture. What's going on? Why are they together? Do they know each other? Are they doing things together? Are they totally separate? Do they not know each other at all? Have a think about the picture. You know, what's the link? What's the perception? Who are these people? Why are they here? I'll give you a clue. These are British people in Greece, which is why Inés was able to tell me where this was. Now, I've used this photo with different groups, cross-culturally, internationally, as well as in the UK. What is fascinating is not the accuracy of the story that they come up with, and there have been lots of different stories. So I'll give you a couple of the extremes. The guy in the middle is a gang leader, and the other two are his bodyguards. Is one. Or they don't know each other at all, and they just happen to be walking along the same street in the same direction. The guy in the middle is the boss, and he's quite relaxed. You see him with his hands in his pockets, etc., etc. Whatever the story you've come up with about this picture, and these are three guys, the guy in the middle and the guy on the right of the picture, they know each other, grandfather and grandson. And then the guy on the left, he doesn't know the other two, but he's on the same holiday trip together. The point is not the accuracy. The point is that when we look at something, we develop a perception of it, okay? And we think that that perception is accurate, and we build in all of these evidences to say why we think it's accurate. And the same goes when we're leading cross-culturally. So let me just take this a little bit further and say, when we are trying to lead cross-culturally, we need to be really careful to get our perceptions right and correct. I had a friend who taught in China, and he said, nobody seems to like me. They all spit at me. A few years ago now. And I said, well, why do you have that idea? Or why do you think they don't like you? And he said, well, this spitting is just constant. And it wasn't until another 6 months when he realized that people do that all over the place, or they did at that time. Don't do it so much anymore. But what we do is we take our cultural lens and we interpret people's behavior through it. And that produces problems. So the first question is about the importance of cross-cultural training. Permits have done a survey just very quickly. Do you think that dual careers and partner issues are becoming important in terms of cross-cultural work? And the vast majority say, yes, we want to be a truly international and inclusive organization. So if you're going to get somebody to go abroad, you need to look after their partner. Percentage of organizations where an employee had returned early because of concern over partners, husband, wife, spouse, etc., very quite high, both pre and post pandemic, or pre and during pandemic. Benefits of an international assignment: working cross-culturally, going to another culture and leading people. It facilitates skills, it develops international management potential, and it gives an avenue to your career that is very hard to duplicate. Down the bottom, it provides corporate glue, not a strong reason. The promotion of diversity is an interesting one, because some nationalities and cultures and national governments like to have this as part of their flagship set of values, if you like. Others do not. And so whether it promotes it or not is sometimes an advantage and sometimes not an advantage. How we navigate that is going to be down to how we seek to engage with other people. NetExpat have done some work, and I'll talk a bit more about them, but the importance of what they call cultural agility, could be called cultural intelligence or cultural competence or whatever. In today's global business environment, how important is that? Very important, 34%, extremely important, 65%. You get the idea. As leaders, if we do not understand how cultures work, then we're going to have a real problem. Benefits, where would that be in terms of improving communication? 25%, but the biggest is in terms of effective teamwork and working with others, and competent leadership is just 19%, but you get the idea. Challenges: effective communication, managing cross-cultural teams, and building trust. And the members have effective communication, intercultural work, and trust building, same thing. So it's good to see leaders and team members seeing the same challenges when it comes to working with others. This statistic I find interesting. 96% of those who've taken intercultural training found it moderately or very useful. Moderately useful actually isn't always a positive thing. That's not a very strong endorsement. Very helpful or very useful, 55%. That's a more useful statistic in terms of its usefulness. So just very quickly, I'm running massively out of time. Sorry, too much here. But we tend to culturally group people together. This is an idea that we get. So Southeast Asia, Philippines, Indonesia, you know, India is there as well. Thailand, Iran is an interesting one for that one. And then we see Latin Europe. So certainly around Spain, Portugal, France, and certain parts of Switzerland, Italy, and Israel. Eastern Europe, Greece, Hungary, Albania, the usual suspects, if you like. We tend to group. So we tend to say, where are you from? Ah, this is how you think. But bear in mind that people don't act naturally in terms of their national background. Hofstadter, you may have come across Hofstadter. You may have seen a graph like this that covers different dimensions. I'm not going to go through them, but you get the idea. There are 6 dimensions that we've got. Terminology has changed over a little bit. So masculinity has now become motivation towards achievement and success. If you're interested in the 2 countries here, which of these 2 countries? One is the UK and one is Singapore. I'll leave you to work out which one that is. Okay. Other models tend to stereotypes. We've got to be careful. Erin Mayers from INSEAD done some work on this. Grouping people is easy because our brain likes easy, but is actually incorrect and inaccurate sometimes. Globe, some dimensions that they talk about. Power, distance, uncertainty, avoidance, the same as Hofstadter. Collectivism, 2 dimensions there. Then we got assertiveness, which is similar to that achievement motivation dimension that we've seen. Gender egalitarianism is a new one. Future orientation, performance orientation, and humane, looking after the welfare of individuals. And this is a really interesting study, partially because it's ongoing and it involves a lot of different people from middle managers up to CEOs, and 17,000 people is a lot of people, but also because they've come up with a model of leadership that they see as being pretty universal. So to answer my question that I had at the beginning, and I'm going to finish on this point, being trustworthy, having foresight and planning ahead, being positive, dynamic, encouraging, motivating, all of that positive relationship stuff that we have when we lead other people, and then being communicative, both in terms of the issue, the timing, and the manner. Those things are seen as really important, regardless of the culture that we're operating in. So there are some common things that enable us to lead effectively and to go ahead. What's going to be different is the manner in which those things are actually achieved. But having integrity, having foresight, and planning ahead are pretty universal in terms of those things. Being communicative is somewhat sometimes changes. So it depends at the level of abstraction that we get to. I'm not going to go through all of this, but Erin has done an awful lot on how we actually map cultures. NetExpat is currently doing a survey, and I'll put a link into my resources that you'll get a bit later on. But they look at how people can improve their cross-cultural leadership. And what is interesting is that only 2% of respondents think that going to another country is going to improve your cultural intelligence, if you like. And actually, I think there's nothing better than going to another country and experiencing it in order to understand the people that you're leading. You can't do that with everybody because sometimes we'll be leading too many people. Okay, I'm going to finish there. I'm going to stop sharing. There are some resources I'll send to you, or you'll get a bit later on, but I'm going to just stop there, and I'm going to stop sharing, and I will open up for questions. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Morgan. That was very insightful and interesting. Today's global landscape where more and more people work cross-culturally. We very much encourage questions from the audience. Just put them in the Q&A box. We have one question already, which I will put to you. So it is, do you anticipate our approach to cross-cultural leadership needing to change with the introduction of AI and emerging technologies?
Okay. I was giving a research seminar a few weeks ago around AI and its impact on leadership and management and so on. I mean, one of the challenges is that within this human relationship sphere, nobody really seems to be looking at how AI is going to impact on the way we lead or on how we communicate or whatever. That is going to change in some ways, in some organizations, for some leaders. So I think it's a really good question. And I think it's an incredibly complex question to answer, because when I'm chatting with somebody online now, I do not know, and I'm sure you probably have the same thing, I don't know if I'm chatting to an AI bot, a chat bot, or whether I'm chatting to a person. And they might have a name, and they may even have a face, or I may even be actually chatting online to somebody in a totally different, not from a customer point of view, but just chatting and establishing a friendship with somebody on Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever. And actually, unbeknownst to me, I'm chatting to a computer. I think that the impact of AI is going to vary a huge amount depending on a company's attitude to the way that AI can help or can hinder an organization's effectiveness. And I can see instances where a computer is learning about how to behave and how to interact. And I heard somebody the other day on the radio talk about, actually, we need to interact with AI in the same way we interact with a human, so that it learns and it can do things better. In some ways, it's going to make things more efficient and more effective, but in other ways, it has the potential to really damage relationships. So, for example, if I turn on my computer and I say, okay, chatbot, when anybody emails me or chats to me, please provide a response. That chatbot needs to understand my thinking and my values in order to be able to provide that. And it needs to be able to do so consistently so that it can represent me in a way that has a consistency and that integrity. But I think it's going to take a bit of time to get there. And I think there's going to be a lot of questions about the ethics of doing so. Because just because we've got technology and just because it's easier to ask a chatbot or something to answer an email or a question rather than me taking the time to do so, doesn't make it right. And we've got to be recognizing that if people come to learn that as leaders, I've actually got a chatbot doing my stuff for me, that's going to really damage the trust that people have in me. So I think it's going to be a long time before chatbots, particularly, I've talked about chatbots specifically, but in terms of the way we communicate, and there's not a lot of work going on to investigate that, partially because it's going to be hypothetical and we need to see the technology in place before things actually come to be. Other aspects of AI are going to make leaders' roles easier. So AI, when it's working and when it's working well, and we're not there yet, AI, can you produce a report that looks at the financials or looks at the supply chain or looks at our risks and evaluate all of that stuff, produce a report for me that I can then evaluate, because I have to be accountable for what I'm doing, and then take to the board and so on. That is where the time saving is going to come in, and that will enable me potentially to spend more time relating to people and talking to people and building those relationships that are so important to the way that we go about leading. I hope that answers the question. It's a complicated question, really good.
It's a very complicated question. I think Professor Leuker also wanted to come in there. I've seen she has raised her hand.
Good morning, Jane.
Perhaps that was an accident.
Well, can you hear me? Sorry, my technology is a little slower than I would have liked. I really enjoyed that, Peter. It was really interesting, and it started me. The question on the AI got me thinking about various seminars we've been running and thinking about. So it's a multifaceted question, if you forgive me, but we've got technology-mediated leadership. That's a new thing, isn't it? Now we're leading, but technology is mediating a lot of the ways that we lead. We've also got remote leadership, we've got hybrid leadership, we've got cross-cultural leadership, as you've already very eloquently talked about. We've got the very traditional forms of top-down and bottom-up leadership, and that's a real conundrum for any emerging or existing leader to have to deal with. Yep. Now, leadership, as maybe when I came into this game, was quite straightforward. You're in charge, you're very, bureaucratic structures. I'm the boss. It is in my role to lead you, therefore you will be led by me. But we've moved on so far, haven't we, in the recent years? And I've not quite fear for the future, but I wonder for the new leaders coming along, how we're going to teach them to navigate that complexity of remote, hybrid, asynchronous team management. Our teams come from all over the world, as we know. What would be your advice to them on how to navigate that complexity?
What a complex question.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think one of the challenges that I think exists in this whole sphere, and I'm thinking of it from a point of view of academic study for the moment, but I'll come on to the practicalities in a bit, is that with research, what we've always done is we've taken people who have the title leadership or director or whatever it might be in their job title, and we've gone to them and said, we've got a survey here. Can you fill in the survey and tell us how you lead, what you do, et cetera, et cetera. And that's been the way that we've done it since the 1950s and the Ohio and the Michigan studies and all the rest of it. And what that does is it captures people who are in leadership roles. Now, people can be in leadership roles, but not be leaders, right? If you get the interpersonal bit of this. But you could also have people who are not in leadership roles who are leading very effectively. It's just that they're not at that level and, but they are taking initiative. They are bringing people with them. They are managing or establishing projects and so on. that then translates into the different models of leadership and different ideas of leadership that we have. Now, let's take that theoretical stuff for a moment and bring it into the reality. And it kind of relates to that really age-old question, are leaders born or made, right? And I haven't even touched on that because it's a really interesting, but it's a diverse question. I think there's many answers depending on how you look at it. But the way that many people get into leadership and into careers that involve leadership is that at some point, they either apply for or get recognized for something that they are doing and something about their personality and their skills and their abilities, which gives confidence from somebody above to put them into a position where they can influence and impact on other people. Now, how they then go about doing that is going to be a result of a number of different initiatives. Training, there's going to be performance management, somebody coming and saying, well, actually, maybe it would have been better if you'd have done this way, or even feedback from direct reports that said, you know, I feel isolated and I da-da-da. So then we change what we do. If we're open to that, if we're not arrogant enough to think, oh, I'm doing everything right, then we use that feedback and reflect on it, and we start to change what we do. But we allow our personalities and skills and instinct to kind of lead us in the way, or to kind of let us lead in the way that we think is appropriate. Because after all, if somebody has noticed something about us that puts us into a position of leadership, then that is something that we want to see grow in us and lead us on. Now, it's a long intro to the answer to your question. How do we then navigate these different parameters or ideas or models of leadership? I think it is about leading as we would naturally like to lead, and just letting our personality and developing technical skills as well as motivational skills in terms of just taking people where we want them to be and having that vision and knowing how to implement that vision. You know, we plan all sorts of different things. We plan holidays and we plan trips and we plan house moves and country moves and things like that. When we're planning our career or when we're planning a project, there are different steps. So the technical project management side of things, we put into place, other people get the confidence that we know what we're doing, and they follow where we're at. So there comes a sense in which the other models or the way that we lead will build in those technical AI and the other things that you talked about into what we are already doing, because we have been recognized for the innate things that we have or the things that we're demonstrating. So, you know, there comes, I think personally, my view is there comes a point at which the technical and the research becomes interesting, but useful only in situations where we can apply those things, and otherwise we use our instinct and innate abilities to lead in the way that we think we can.
Can I just add the two things that I'm reading from that are authenticity and trust.
Yeah.
You have to be authentic and you have to trust other people
100%.
to be able to do what they do, whether technology mediated or remote or in the room with you or whatever.
There's something that came to mind while you were asking the question. I think it's really useful to think about here as well. You don't delegate to somebody who's got no chance of achieving what you want them to delegate. Unless you're in a mindset that is kind of devious and political and you want to get rid of somebody, which I have seen, and I personally, I have a problem with that. But there are different ways of getting to the same place, just like there are different ways of making the same decision. So some decisions I might impose because I know if I give it to other people, there's going to be argument, there's going to be conflict. Sometimes I get extra data to help me to do that, but I make a decision because time is short and I just need a decision to be made. So I'll make it, and I'll maybe, if I can, apologize for the way I've done that and explain why I've done that, right? So that's one way. The other way is to consult person by person or group by group so that people feel engaged. And if I've got the time to do that, and if there's not going to be so much conflict, then I'll do that. Or sometimes if I don't really mind, I'll delegate the decision completely. Set up a working group. You guys come up with what you think is going to work. I'll have a look at it, but let's, you know, as long as everything is okay, I'll go with whatever you decide. Because to my mind, there's no budgetary issues. It's fine. And I think that's something to bear in mind. We don't lead the same people in the same way all of the time. We use different tools and techniques to engage depending upon the constraints of the situation.
Thank you so much, Peter. We do have a number of interesting questions as well, and cautious of time, if we could maybe cluster them. It seems to be an interest around history, to what extent history matters. It seems to be the role of education and leadership training. So I'm clustering those under the training for leaders, education, and the role and the importance of understanding history of people's culture. So if you comment, brief commentary, Peter, much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Okay, history, whenever you're trying to understand anything, understanding the history of something is really massively important. The way that people have related and behaved with each other is a huge issue. And you can understand a lot more about people's behavior if you understand why somebody thinks the way they do, or what has happened in their life or in the organization or nationally. Yeah, it's a big part. And it's one that doesn't get looked at in management research. And even in the research I presented, it's a snapshot. It's not a prolonged view of understanding how people come to where they are. So yes, history is really important. Sometimes you are responsible for that history. Sometimes you are not. I have a thing in my head that says you don't apologize for things that you're not causing, because then the next time something happens, they're going to come back to you and you're going to be found wanting again. So there's a caution about some of that. But yeah, history does impact on the way that people lead. In terms of education, and does training impact on people's behavior? That's going to vary on a number of different accounts. Number one, there are some people who are more trainable than others. Okay, so how fixed we are in what we do, that's going to be an issue. Number two, what it is that we're trying to train. And I mentioned the music and the sense of direction and things. Some things can be trained, other people cannot. Other things cannot. What was the third area, Aeneas?
Yeah, about sort of the skills and training and education for improving that.
Okay. So the effectiveness of leadership training depends upon how it is then developed after you've done a training course, right? So if you do a training course and you say, great, you're now a leader, that's not going to work. But if you do a training course, you say, great, what we're now going to do is give you 6 to 8 to 12 months working on a project with a team, with a mentor who's going to coach you through different scenarios as you take your project through. That is going to be far more effective, because you've then got a reason to change. You know, it's a bit like criminal behavior in a way, means, motive, and opportunity. You have the opportunity, you have the motive, but actually inculcating and developing and changing your behavior is going to be about the pressure and the accountability that you have for doing that. And so it depends on how any training program is developed and how things are moved forward. I hope I've covered the 3 areas though.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. There are quite a few questions. So what we can do is, Professor Morgan, I will send you the questions, and you could perhaps type an answer out, and I'll include it in the follow-up email if that sounds good, just to make sure that everyone's had their questions answered.
No problem. Yeah.
I will now hand over to Dr. Gikas to talk very briefly about the Coventry University MBA in partnership with CWEIC.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Hopefully you are able to see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen. If you can press the presenting mode.
Okay, great. So welcome again. Thank you so much, Peter. I have a number of slides here. I'll try to be effective in summarizing some key issues of importance. So first of all, the Coventry University MBA is a flagship program for the business school, and the MBA Global Trade and Investment is a bespoke part-time course especially designed for CWEIC strategic partners, as well as the wider trade and investment network in the Commonwealth. It will be delivered online with the inclusion of the optional residentials. This unique offer is a closed bespoke course which builds on the Coventry MBA in developing practice and creating sustainable long-term value, but will also expose participants to exploring opportunities to expand their network. Again, a number of opportunities within the course to enhance the skills and understanding. Peter mentioned the importance of skills and training for developing effective leaders, and most importantly, perhaps implementing global trade agreements, investments, and partnerships. It has a strong practitioner focus. Personal and skills development is an underlying theme throughout the course. In a moment, I will share with you three fundamental strategic reasons for joining the program. Here we highlight the courses for the MBA in global trade and investment. We can see the course structure, a number of innovative modules such as innovation, entrepreneurship, leadership, and change management. This is our third webinar, and Peter addressed the module of leadership and change management. Global marketing, other modules include global trade and investments. The highlighted in green are the modules for the specific focus on global trade and investment. Here you have an overview of the entire course structure of the MBA program. Has three stages, if you like. The first stage is the certificate modules, the second stage are the diploma modules, and the third stage are the master modules. So there is an exempt based on your background and experience. Again, at the diploma, at the certificate level, there is a mod. We cover modern enterprise and business environment. How does it work? At the diploma level, we prepare the leaders for tomorrow, what needs to change. And at the master level, it's all about bringing change to place, all about that leading change, managing change. So again, as I mentioned, there's an exempt from the certificate level modules, the modules in green here, for those with a significant years of experience and working in senior leadership roles. I'll explain about that in just a second. In terms of the delivery schedule, the delivery of the MBA, we specialize in global trade and investment, is a blended delivery mode through a mix of online and synchronous and asynchronous content using learning platforms such as Aula. Again, participants will have an opportunity to participate in the optional residentials in one of the Coventry University's global hubs across the world. During these residentials, local teams at the hub will draw on local and regional expertise to provide a schedule of masterclass sessions. Again, learners will who are unable to travel to a specific hub for the optional residential will receive access to relevant content and materials, and therefore they do take advantage of that as well. Here we have a sample delivery of the very, very first modules for the Commonwealth MBA in Global Trade and Investment. So for the first semester, which starts this September 2024, the first module is on innovation and entrepreneurship. This is an online 2-day delivery, will include synchronous, exemplar online, asynchronous materials, case studies, videos, module leader advice and feedback, followed by leadership and change management module, strategy, decision-making modules, etc. Coventry University, we do have strategic partners, and here are a number of our partners that have taken our MBA, such as NHS, Ministry of Justice, MOD, so just to name a few. What do we offer? Again, this is an international team of academics offering an international perspective. We draw on their industry experience to inform teaching and training programs, research and consultancy activities. We do apply an innovative pedagogy, which includes pitch, which includes presentations, simulations, live clients, business reports, to name a few. the good news, this MBA does not include any exams, so there are no exams for this particular MBA. There are weekly drop-in sessions with your module leaders and associate lecturers, so you are always connected within this program. There are MBA mini webinar series developing students' soft skills. Again, very, very important, the soft skills and networking skills. Specialized guest speaker sessions, as I mentioned before, optional residentials, and of course, an annual MBA conference. Support, there is a 24/7 support, 24/7 support, online library resources, including digital books and journals, access to online study skills and resources. I mentioned the AULA learning virtual environment. In addition, weekly feedback and advice hour provision available to all learners to conduct their lectures. There's a module leader, access to the course directors, access to the progress coaches, health and well-being support, and of course, an opportunity for Q&A sessions on regular intervals using various means of communication. What are those entry criteria? So again, applicants for this course must show evidence that are within that umbrella of CWEIC, strategic partners and wider networks, have an undergraduate degree, and then for those with a 7 years experience of senior leadership or experience running their own venture, then they do get an exempt. So for example, all learners who have been accepted to take part in the MBA in Global Trade and Investment will get a 60 credit exemption for those that are eligible. And this includes the certificate level modules, and then for the skills and experience gained by working in a senior leadership position or running their own ventures. Again, in terms of the application process, the typical documents required, it's a degree certificate, professional qualifications, awards, and cover letter, and of course, an online application. Now, finance is always important. So in terms of the fees, this is a specially negotiated fee which applies to this course. So the standard fee for this running academic year is 20,300 for the MBA. However, for those eligible for the recognition of prior experiential learning, then it's a pro rata of 13,533. So again, on top of that, there's a further discount of £1,000 per person will be applied to the first 100 learners to enroll on the course, of this particular course. So therefore, it gives a tuition fee as recorded here. Again, there is flexibility in terms of fee payments, which can be made on installment on each semester. Again, after you have applied, your application will be reviewed against those criteria I just mentioned, and following the approval, once accepting your offer, you'll be sent a payment link. So, and then you can arrange that accordingly. Once we have received the payment, and application will be processed for enrollment. So the modules you are studying will be then attached to your records and will be granted access to the online learning environment, our virtual learning platform, and then you will have access to all these resources, the plethora of resources. So we are here to support this learning journey. We are here to welcome you to this innovative program. And now I would like you to offer the opportunity for any further questions. We are happy, myself and my colleagues, to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Aeneas, Dr. Gikas, for that great overview. If there are any questions about the MBA program specifically, do put them in the Q&A box. And if you have a question that you might have later, please do get in touch. I will be sending the summary of the webinar this morning, of the masterclass this morning, to your email in this week. And you'll find the contact details and the PowerPoint slides in that email as well. And I don't think any questions have come through specifically about the Q&A section. And as we are now at 11 o'clock, I'm keen. I know that everyone has other engagements to go to. So I just wanted to say a really big thank you to Professor Morgan for his very insightful masterclass this morning, incredibly important as teams become more and more culturally diverse. I would also like to say a big thank you to Dr. Gikas and Professor Leuker for their great insights as well, and their overview of the Coventry MBA program, and also generally a big thank you to Coventry University for working together with CWEIC to put this MBA program on offer to our strategic partners and the wider network. We've had really good engagement today. Thank you to all the attendees for your time, for sticking around, and for really getting involved. I can see that Professor Morgan has already answered some of the questions, and we will make sure that you get the answers to the questions via email as well. With that, I think we've come to the end of the masterclass. Dr. Gikas and Professor Morgan, if you would like to say a word, by all means do, and then we'll finish.
Well, thank you. And I've been answering the questions whilst others have been talking. So I've just got one more to come around education and leadership training. It's been great to be able to share with you. Leadership is a very nebulous concept. You can't say this is how to do it, or this is how to do it, or whatever. It's very much down to the individual. And when you're working cross-culturally, those challenges become greater. So good luck and best wishes. Thank you.
Yeah, so very briefly, if you allow me maybe to summarize, because there was enough information on those slides there. So sometimes it's like information overflow. So maybe if you allow me to share 3 compelling reasons, which those reasons are strategic decisions for joining us, applying for this MBA. So number 1, it provides a holistic preparation for dynamic global business ecosystems. So by offering modules like global trade and investment, financial instruments in global business environment, strategy and decision-making, we saw previously, the MBA programs equips learners with the agility and flexibility.
I think we may have lost Dr. Gikas.
Yeah.
Yes, which is a shame as he was wrapping up. I think that is a sign we will wrap up today. But thank you very much for everyone joining today, and we'll be in touch with further information and follow up. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.